All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone for hopping on this Tuesday, first day of July. Really appreciate everybody who's been joining these monthly webinars to hear about everything that's going on with immigration and have some good discussion. So, again, appreciate you all for hopping on today. So, to start off, if you haven't already done so in the chat, want to encourage you to introduce yourself, let us know who you are, let us know your name, your pronouns, and where you're joining us from. And then, as always, we will send a follow-up email to everybody who registered for tonight, and it'll include the recording of the slides and any links that we reference. So I just want to flag that in case folks are wondering. So we will send out the slides, a link to the slides, as well as a recording for tonight's session, which you can obviously share with others, or if you have to hop off early, you'll get that later this week. So great to see. We've got some folks from Oakland, Orinda, Castro Valley, San Francisco, Vallejo, Modesto in the house, Monterey. Welcome, everybody. So quick introductions for staff on the call. So my name is Luis Ojeda, he, him, regional or organizing manager with NorCal. And I am excited to be here. And I am joined by our organizing director, Ashley. I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everybody. Ashley, she, her. I'm the organizing director here at ACLU NorCal, based in our San Francisco office. Thank you all for being on.
Wonderful. So Ashley's going to be helping out in the chat as well. So I want to encourage folks to use the Q&A to ask any questions, I should say. That'll help us track those questions as they come in. And then you can utilize the chat as a way of just introducing yourself or other things. But I think if folks could try to use the Q&A as much as possible, it'll make it really easier for us to manage those questions as they come in. But feel free to drop a question at any point in time. We'll hopefully be able to get to those questions at the end of the program. So here's a quick agenda in terms of what you can expect for tonight. We're going to spend a little bit of time sharing some national updates. It's been a month since we last got together, and so obviously a lot has happened in that month. And then we'll spend the bulk of the conversation on ways to support immigrants. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure to share with everybody was really just like tangible ways that folks could engage and be supportive of the immigrant community in this moment. So hopefully that will be helpful for folks. And then we'll move towards a Q&A and discussion. So again, we'll have some time for questions, but also if there are, or we have some questions we want to also ask you all. So there'll be an opportunity to hear from folks who are here tonight. And then we'll wrap up by just sharing some upcoming events that we want to plug and encourage you all to participate as well. So welcome, everyone. All right, so really quickly, again, we're going to go through these relatively quickly, and a lot of this obviously is not new if you're watching the news or paying attention to what's going on, but obviously we want to emphasize some of these things that obviously are important and that are very relevant in this discussion around immigration. So the first is related to birthright citizenship. So I'm sure that folks heard the recent US Supreme Court decision around this issue. Back in January, when the Trump administration announced that he was going to be trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, there was immediate lawsuits that were filed, and there was a lot of effort to try and stop that from happening. And as folks, I'm sure, saw from the Supreme Court decision, it really dealt more with the universal injunctions that lower courts were issuing, as opposed to the merits of the birthright citizenship issue or the attempt to get rid of birthright citizenship. And so that's an important component of it, that this does not mean that this is over. This does not mean that the Trump administration can end birthright citizenship. This is still going to go through the legal processes. And one of the things that was that the Supreme Court decided as well is that a lot of the cases need to go through sort of a different mechanism, particularly through things like class action lawsuits. And so, as you can see here, the ACLU, many ACLUs and other partners filed a nationwide class action lawsuit challenging the administration's executive order once again. So again, just making sure that we're doing everything that we can to continue fighting back on this attempt. And so I've linked here a couple of cases that deal with the issue. So you can go ahead and take a look at those more closely. But I think one of the things we just wanted to emphasize for tonight was that this effort is far from over, and there's going to be more and more efforts to continue to stop this from taking effect. And so it's really important for folks to make sure that we're paying attention and that we're following this, because I think this is a very relevant issue, and obviously there's a lot that is happening uh, in various areas of law. The other thing that we wanted to flag as well was an attempt by the Trump administration to end TPS for folks from Haiti. We have talked about the attempts to end TPS for other folks from other countries, and this is the most recent announcement. And so this would impact 500,000 Haitians. And so this is set to expire August 3rd, so only a month away. And again, this is a huge, significant group of people that this is going to impact. And so obviously there's a lot of efforts to try and challenge these attempts to end TPS. But again, we're dealing with people's lives. These are folks who fled things, bad things that were happening in their country, turmoil, gang violence, and other issues. And so obviously this is really terrible news, and obviously this is going to impact these folks very directly. And so I think there's a lot to happen still, and so we'll see kind of how this plays out. But again, this is just another in the pattern of the Trump administration's efforts to strip folks of legal status. And again, these folks, once their TPS is terminated, would be subject to deportation. And so obviously, again, it's going to have a really harmful ripple effect in our communities. So I wanted to flag that for folks. One piece of good news, obviously the release of Mahmoud Khalil. Hopefully folks saw the video of when he was arriving in the airport and saw this good news, but obviously just wanted to highlight the severity of this case. Mahmoud spent over 100 days in immigration detention in Louisiana, which is really crazy to think about. And I think it's a really awful case that obviously the ACLU was deeply involved, but I think also folks were just really paying attention to, right? I think as we think about any folks in the community who could be detained, and to think about this sort of example of someone who was detained for over 100 days, whose only crime, right, was speaking in support of Palestinians. And so I think it's really one of those cases that really makes you think about sort of where we are as a country and the things that are happening here. But again, it's a good news that he's released, and also that just want to note that his child was born in April, which again, it's a really sad thing to note, that he wasn't able to be there for the birth of his child. But hopefully, now that he's reunited, hopefully things will go smoothly. But he is technically still facing deportation proceedings, and there is still a case that's ongoing against him. And so this obviously is not over. It's going to continue, but he has committed to continuing to speak out against the Trump administration's immigration policies and attempts to silence folks. So really important there. And then obviously a lot happened as well in California, with the National Guard being deployed in Los Angeles and in Southern California. And then obviously the recent decision by the Supreme Court as well to essentially allow the Ninth U.S. District Court of Appeal, excuse me, not the Supreme Court, ruling that the president could maintain control over the National Guard troops in LA. So obviously that is continuing, and they are still there. And there's still lots of activity happening in Southern California and in Los Angeles and the surrounding communities. And lots of folks are being detained. And since June 6th, DHS has reported that about 1,618 folks have been picked up and arrested throughout the Los Angeles region. So obviously these are the numbers that DHS has shared publicly. And so obviously we know it's impossible to verify the accuracy of these numbers, but obviously these are 1,600 people at minimum that have been picked up, that have been impacted, that are no longer in their communities with their families. And so I'm sure folks have seen all the videos from the various arrests that are happening throughout Los Angeles and Southern California. And it really, you've been able to see the scary images of folks who are masked and who are picking up people at different locations and really just folks are obviously protesting and fighting back and trying to do everything they can to speak out against their ISIS presence. But obviously, every day we're seeing new and new videos and images of these apprehensions and arrests happening as well. And so, again, we're going to continue to monitor the situation. And obviously, we don't know if this is going to spread to other cities at the moment. Right now, it's still mostly isolated to Southern California, but obviously, it's impossible to say whether or not we may see a similar effort in other places to the extent that we've seen in Los Angeles. A couple of sort of graphics that I wanted to note as well. In the New York Times recently put out this article that sort of showed a map of immigration arrests across the country. And here you can see, this might be hard for folks to see, but you can see here in California, for example, immigration arrests have essentially doubled, have gone up 123%. But then you also see in places like Nevada, over 200, almost 300% increase, similar to Oregon. Florida as well, 200. But across the country, we've seen a huge increase in terms of the number of arrests that are happening. And so I think it's really important just to note that, this isn't just something that's happening here in California. Unfortunately, it is happening all across the country, and communities across the nation are being impacted. And folks are really feeling the effects of the deportation machine that is currently going out and getting folks. And so, I just want to put that into context in terms of the state of things and where we are. Additionally, I'll link this video that KPBS recently put out that I thought was really great, that really highlighted various different numbers, but in particular, it compared arrests and detention of immigrants by Customs and Border Protection and ICE. And so here at the top, you can see that it breaks down Biden under Biden and under Trump. And so again, the blue with Border Protection, Border Patrol, apprehensions mostly at the border or at or near the border. You can see that those blue bars are higher. And then you can see that they're lower now during the Trump administration. But then they sort of flipped with ICE doing a lot more interior arrests and enforcement throughout the country, as I noted earlier. And so you can see that the bars of purple of ICE arrests and detention going up significantly. And so again, the focus of arresting immigrants has shifted away from the border and has now fully gone into the interior, as it's called, or into communities and into different states all across the country. But again, numbers that are much higher than they've been in the past. And I think the other thing that the video notes as well, that again we'll link to, but it also classifies individuals who are arrested into different categories that ICE uses, and it has category 1, 2, and 3 based on sort of what ICE assesses as their threat level. 1 being the worst, and that only makes up 7% of the detention population. In comparison, folks who are marked as no ICE threat level, so these are folks who don't have criminal records or any outstanding immigration issues. They constitute about 80% of the folks who make up immigration detention. So again, I think the narrative that the video is sort of addressing the narrative that the Trump administration is pushing, that these are, they're going after folks who are gang members or violent criminals or folks that have criminal records. But again, the data and the reality is that anyone and everyone is sort of being targeted, and ICE is really not prioritizing any particular segment of the population. They're really essentially going after anyone who was an immigrant. And so I think that should also very much concern us as well. And then obviously today, as folks I'm sure heard, the Senate passed their budget reconciliation bill. A very, very close vote. The Vice President broke that tie. This had previously passed in the House, but the version there in the House was different. And so now the Senate has made changes. It will be going back to the House. Some highlights include $4 trillion in tax cut extensions, $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid, and $175 billion for immigration enforcement. And so this includes things like the border wall, funding for detention centers, hiring of more ICE agents, and the like. And so again, this is a really concerning bill, obviously, and I'm sure that folks have heard other bad things about it. It mixes and combines a lot of different issues that I think a lot of folks obviously have a ton of concerns about. But we want to encourage folks to give their member of Congress a call, especially if you live in a district where you're represented by a Republican, because the first time around when it passed the House, most Republicans voted in favor of it, and most Democrats voted against it. And then in particular, we encourage folks to give David Valadao, especially if you're a constituent, but even if you're not. Obviously, the bill, if it passes, is going to impact all of us. And so I think it's important for him to hear from everybody who's going to be impacted by the bill. But his number is there at 202-225-4695, and want to encourage him to vote no on the reconciliation bill. He's made a lot of comments related to the cuts to Medicaid that he's concerned about. I believe the number is about 67% of folks in his district rely on Medicaid for their health coverage. And so obviously any cuts to the program are going to have a significant impact on his constituents directly. And so, if he is going to be representing his constituents in his district, it's important for him to understand the impact that it could have on folks in the district. So again, this is moving pretty quickly. Trump has stated that he would like to sign it by the end of the weekend, but who knows if that ends up happening. So this is something that's moving fast, and a lot of changes could happen. But again, just a lot of serious concerns, and again, specifically highlighting this $175 billion for immigration detention and the tremendous impact that would have. Right now, we're talking about really awful numbers. The Trump administration has laid out a daily quota of 3,000 immigration arrests. And so obviously, in order to be able to meet that quota, they need more resources, they need more agents, they need more money to be able to do all of that, more bed spaces. And so again, this is going to be a critical component of it. And so obviously, a lot of harmful and bad things could happen if this does come to pass. So again, want to urge folks to contact their member of Congress and also contact David Valadao directly as well, especially if you know anybody who lives in Kern County or Kings County or Tulare County that's a constituent of his. Definitely encourage folks to call. One other thing I wanted to just sort of note really quickly, and just to sort of highlight the cruelty and the lack of humanity that I think this administration has really showed. I'm sure folks saw this recently, a couple days ago now, talking about quote unquote alligator Alcatraz, this detention center that's going to be in Florida at an abandoned airport that would house about 5,000 immigrants. And this is a tweet that DHS put out. Again, just sort of making light of the situation. And again, these are folks that would obviously be detained here and locked up and be separated from their families or communities. So I think it's really important for folks to again continue to push back. And so obviously this is in Florida, this is in California, but to just put that into context, this new center would hold about 5,000 immigrants. And in comparison, all 6 of the detention centers have about 7,000 beds collectively all across the state to house immigrants here. And so again, this is a massive amount of people. And again, this is just another example of the things that the administration is doing. It is continuing to seek to build and take over different facilities to hold more people, because that is the plan, is to arrest more people put more people in detention, and deport more folks. And so really, really frightening things that are happening as well. All right, so we're going to pivot a little bit now to talk about ways to support immigrants. It's really important for folks to do something, right? I think collectively, if you're here, all the things that I shared before that are happening, we obviously don't think are correct and they shouldn't be happening. And so I think right now it's a moment where a lot of folks are feeling overwhelmed and we're not quite sure what to do. Maybe folks want to get involved, but they don't know how they want to engage. And so we're going to go over a few different examples. Obviously, this isn't the end all be all list of things. There's a million things that folks could do, and there's no right or wrong way. But I think we'll sort of go through some things that hopefully are tangible and realistic, and that folks can do as well. So before we start, I just want to highlight some reminders. So it's really important for folks to do a personal risk assessment, and so obviously this deals with a lot of different aspects. But for example, your legal status. Are you a U.S. citizen? Do you have temporary protection or other temporary immigration status, or are you a non-citizen? That's really important in order to be able to think about and to make sure that you're keeping those things in mind as you're taking any type of action and putting yourself at risk. And so I think it's really important for folks to just do a little bit of reflecting. And this isn't just for yourself, it's also for your family, for folks in your friends, your neighbors, to really sort of think about the folks around your networks and your circles, to really think about this risk assessment. Again, as you've seen in LA, a lot of folks are sort of just being picked up and arrested, and this does also include U.S. citizens. And so obviously there is no zero risk, even if you are a U.S. citizen, in terms of just being involved in doing something in this moment. But obviously there's, I would say, less of a risk than someone who, for example, has no legal status and is not a citizen. Obviously, their participation and their involvement in different activities can get them in more trouble. So I think it's really important for folks to just have those conversations and for you to think about what that means and how you're putting yourself at risk in terms of doing any of these different activities that in a normal world, we would understand them to be totally normal and legal things, but that again are being challenged or are being considered something that folks shouldn't be doing. And so, folks are taking pictures of ICE and somehow that's like bad, or you're recording them or asking them questions and somehow that's not appropriate, even though that's something that folks have been doing for many, many years. But I think that also includes not just like your own legal status, but also, again, like, do you have children? Do you have folks who depend on you for different things, right? And I think it's really important for folks to just think about that. And I think it's important for folks to understand that, like, we all have to risk something, right? There is a level of risk involved in anything that we do, but to be mindful of various factors before you engage in any activities. And then I think whenever possible, it's important for folks not to do this work alone. We encourage folks to connect with a trusted community organization. I think we've seen a lot of different networks or groups that are popping up that they want to do something and folks are doing it. And I think that's obviously amazing and great. But what's even greater is then connecting with other folks. So it's not just one person or two people, right? It's part of a larger effort. And obviously the immigrants' rights movement and immigrants' rights organizations have been doing lots of work on these issues, prior to the first and the second Trump administration. Like, folks have been doing organizing work and doing a lot of efforts to protect immigrants for a very long time. And so I think it's also really important to just highlight and acknowledge that, and sort of for folks to just look around their community, like, who is doing this work already and how can I plug in, how can I get involved in that way as well. There may be some places that doesn't exist, right? Maybe there's nothing, and that's where folks getting involved is going to be critical to build something new if that's the case. But where it is possible, we encourage you to go through a trusted community organization. And then just a reminder that I think, again, that this is a moment that really should compel us all to act, right? Like, this cannot be the norm. This cannot be the way that we are going to be proceeding. We cannot accept this, and we cannot accept that this is going to be the new normal. And so if that is the way that we feel, that is what we believe, then we have to do something in order for us to be able to stop it, or at least slow it down or challenge it, right? Like, I think it's important for us to just do something in this moment rather than be overwhelmed by everything that's happening. All right, we've shared this list many, many times before in terms of the local rapid response networks that exist all across Northern California. So I wanted to pause and see if I could just get like a show of hands through the reaction. How many of y'all have already connected with your rapid response network and are involved in them in some way or another? Great. I'm seeing some hands, so that's great. Um, Great, great. Okay. I'm seeing some reactions, some hearts, some hands. So that's lovely. So I would love, for those that are involved, feel free to drop this in the chat. What is your involvement? How are you connected with them? What, share that for other folks. One of the things that we literally, I think, have shared this slide at every single presentation that we've done since we started these in March. We've really tried to sort of funnel folks in to say this is the network that exists locally. They are the ones that are organizing around how to support folks in these moments. They are paying attention to ICE reports, getting calls about where ICE is at, going out in the communities and verifying whether they're actually there or not. And yeah, getting that information out. And then they're also connected to legal resources as well. So oftentimes, I would say probably for the most part, all these networks are connected to other legal resources. And so again, when somebody does call and somebody is actually impacted by a recent arrest or their family member was detained, they're then able to support them by providing them with resources or connecting them with the legal resources that they need. And so again, there's sort of a system that is in place that is really meant to support folks in these really difficult times. So I think this is sort of an easy, not easy, but this is a very direct and clear and easy, I said easy again, a very clear way for folks to get involved. So again, we'll share these slides, but if you're not already involved, if you've reached out, I'm seeing some in the chat that folks have reached out, but they haven't maybe haven't heard back. And so we can definitely support you in figuring out how to make connection with those groups. But oftentimes these groups are holding regular trainings and they have different chat networks or different communication methods where again they're bringing folks into the fold and making them part of their networks. And I think an important component of the network is obviously being able to have broad support in the community. And so again, the more people are involved, the better. If there's like one person, right, who's responding to reports of ICE in the city, that's going to be very challenging for them to be able to confirm ICE sightings on their own. But if we had, imagine someone in each block, and we have someone who's covering all parts of the city or a town, when ICE is spotted, it's going to be much easier for folks to be able to confirm those sightings and then be able to warn folks about those. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, just really want to emphasize and encourage folks to reach out to the Rapid Response Network. All of the networks that we have listed here have websites or forms that folks can fill out to get involved. And then these numbers are not for general calls. These are the numbers that you would call to report ICE activity. So again, make sure this number is saved in your phone, depending on where you live. You want to make sure that you have this number saved so that again, in the event that you do cite ICE or see ICE in the community, that you're able to give this number a call and report it. And again, we'll talk a little bit more now about sort of what that looks like. So again, want to emphasize the importance of the rapid response networks. And I think right now what's happening is that there's a lot of fear in the community, and there's a lot of rumors or reports of ICE in the community, but a lot of them are not confirmed, or they're other law enforcement agencies and not ICE or immigration So, that's obviously a concern because people are afraid, and they're sharing rumors or, a screenshot of an image they saw online that says ICE is here and here, and that's really creating panic as well. And so I wanted to just sort of pause for a moment and just sort of highlight some of these. So we've shared this first image here. So this is the most obvious images, right? So Border Patrol often has sort of this green stripe, and then CBP and ICE and other agencies will also often have the blue. But what we're seeing now is that there's a lot of unmarked vehicles that just look suspicious. But again, it could be another agency. It could be sheriff. It could be local police. It could be probation. It could be FBI. Other government agencies. And so I think we want to just sort of highlight in this moment of increased tension and fear. We want to encourage folks to utilize that number to report ICE activity, but to be very mindful of what you're reporting. So again, if you see, for example, a sheriff vehicle that again may be untinted, may have may look like the cars in these pictures, but again, you see an individual with a vest that's a sheriff, then that likely is not an ICE activity. Again, in California, local police are not supposed to be collaborating with ICE, and so definitely let us know if you are seeing that, but that isn't supposed to be happening. And so if you're seeing local law enforcement or other CHP, school police, anything like that, then obviously that's not something that you would want to report as ICE, because again, it's just going to create more fear and confusion in the community. And again, volunteers are then going out into the community to confirm those sightings. And again, they're not legitimate. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared and we're getting familiar with the types of things that we may see. So this graphic sort of highlights a few things. Obviously, this is not 100% true all the time, but one thing they want to highlight is that ICE is often operates early in the morning hours, but they can be active at any time of the day, as we've seen again in LA. Broad daylight during the daytime are picking folks up. Often there are US made cars, and so again, here's some brands: Ford, GMC, Chevy, Dodge, but again, may not always be the case. And again, these are just some examples. They may have regular license plates that don't say California exempt, but also at times they may not have license plates or dealership placards. There's also been videos online, for example, where they switch plates. And so, I think we can't sort of assume that if it's we can't make anything out of the plates sometimes. Sometimes it's a little confusing. And so again, it's sort of a combination of a lot of different factors that you have to take into mind. But I think the tinted windows is a very common thing, obviously. But again, a lot of law enforcement vehicles will use tinted windows. And so just because you see a tinted window vehicle, that doesn't mean it's ICE. Again, police lights as well. They might be in the visor, front grille, bumpers, or rear window areas. But again, I think a lot of different law enforcement have lights in different areas. But again, these might be signs. So I think it's really important for folks to, again, use these as sort of clues, but there is no sort of, this is always ICE, right? Obviously, if they're vest says ICE, that is the most obvious one. But I think just in terms of random vehicles that look suspicious or are unmarked or have tinted windows, I think there's sort of a little bit of wait and see. Like if you're able to stick around for a bit and see if you see anybody get out of the vehicle or any activity, I think that obviously that's going to be helpful. But I think just want to reiterate the notion of not just assuming that any vehicle that's unmarked is ICE. But again, if you do see something suspicious and you're not sure, you can always call that number, say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And then again, the network can send out volunteers to confirm and check it out. But it is really important for folks to just note as much information as possible in terms of what you're seeing, because I think that's going to be the most helpful thing. Oftentimes the networks will get calls about a random vehicle, but not much information is is shared, and so it's hard for them to then follow up and confirm those things. So again, as I noted, make sure that you're making a note of descriptions of vehicles, what type of vehicle, what color, what it looks like, anything like that. The number of agents or what kind of uniforms they're wearing, if you can spot any badges, and then also the location. So thinking about like exact address, obviously are very helpful, but also cross streets if you don't know the address. I think sometimes again, folks can call and just don't have the obvious information, and then it makes it more difficult for folks to be able to confirm it. So I want to encourage folks to just sort of get into the habit of thinking about various questions that you want to keep in mind. So as you're going on, maybe you're going to the grocery store and you see a random vehicle, to really think about various different questions that you want to ask yourself to make sure that you are taking into account. But we want to also encourage you to take pictures and or videos, because obviously that's the most obvious and helpful way of confirming things when you do report activity. Oftentimes what folks will send in, for example, is just like a notes app type of deal where it's just text that says ICE seen on A Street and B Street, and there's no proof, there's no sort of information. And so I think it's really important for folks to just have a little bit of evidence and to support any suspected ICE activity. We want to encourage folks to be safe. You do obviously have the right to film law enforcement, but also you should not interfere with any ongoing activity. So it's important for folks to sort of maintain a distance and to be able to be safe when you're doing that as well. Yes, we'll send out the slides. You'll get the links. So hopefully, I'll try to get it out by tomorrow, if not Thursday. Okay, another activity that folks can really engage in that could be super helpful is also doing some communication and connections with businesses. I think in this moment, there's just a lot happening, and obviously we know that ICE can go anywhere and be in a lot of different places. And so obviously businesses are places where a lot of people congregate. Folks may be exposing themselves. And so if you are a small business owner or you have a favorite small business that you have a relationship with someone there, we want to encourage folks to reach out, have conversations about what they can be doing to be allies in this moment as well. So really thinking about, for example, putting up signs for private areas to restrict ICE access. So we know that ICE does technically have access to any areas that are technically considered public. And so obviously that's going to be a large portion of some businesses, but obviously businesses also have private areas. And so making sure that they're making a designation for those areas to sort of protect themselves in terms of where ICE can and can't go. But also any sort of messages of support for immigrants in this moment as well. So, if they're putting up a poster or they're sharing red cards or other information about Know Your Rights trainings or events that are happening, but just sort of encouraging more businesses and more venues and spaces to just be more visibly pro-immigrant and more immigrant friendly. Obviously, again, it's a place where people congregate, it's a place where people come together. And so I think that's an opportunity for folks to get information, for folks to be aware of, for example, the Valley Watch Network or other networks across the state, so that if a business or their staff, if they find that, or they see ICE, for example, they know what to do, they know who to call, they have the information that they need in order to be able to be helpful in those situations. So again, this is sort of a straightforward, easy way. And obviously there's lots of folks who are doing, lots of businesses, small businesses that are doing a lot of great things, but also others that maybe don't know what to do. Another example of things that folks can engage in is canvassing. I'm calling them higher risk areas, just in the sense of, like, these are places where we've seen ICE activity, for example, in Southern California. So today and tomorrow, I've seen various activities happening at Home Depots, for example. There's this graphic that they put out ICE out of Home Depot. Essentially, again, we're seeing folks being picked up there. These may be day laborers or folks who are in the parking lot looking for work, and they may be undocumented. And we're seeing ICE picking folks up there. And so again, there may be a Home Depot or Lowe's or other store where folks are hanging out and looking for work. You could, for example, share know your rights information or a red card. But sort of making those connections with folks can be helpful to just make sure that folks know their rights as well. I've also included examples of things like swap meets, parks, street corners where street vendors set up, and again, other high-risk areas where ICE has been spotted. And so you know your community, you know folks that are where folks set up or where folks congregate. And so I think just thinking about those things and using that as an opportunity to, again, spread information, talk to your community, let them know, again, about their rapid response network, what to do in the event of ICE activity and how they can report it if they see it. I think we'd be surprised at how few people or how many people don't know about these resources that exist. And so I think any sort of attempts to fill in those gaps and make connections in the community, I think are super important. So really think about those types of opportunities that you can see in your community. I also suggested, for example, rearranging your route home. So maybe you pass by a Home Depot, for example, on your way home, or you could, or any other location that you think there has been reports of ICE in the past, and maybe you're just going to sort of pass by there on a regular basis or shop nearby or something where you're, again, eyes out in the community, you're paying attention to what's happening, and you're sort of serving as an additional monitor for what's going on. And I think there's a lot of that happening as sort of folks patrolling communities as a community member who's concerned about ICE showing up in any of these locations. And being able to proactively take action in the event of that happening. And again, reporting it, providing information, and building those connections in the community. Another thing that a lot of different groups are doing as well is accompaniment to ICE check-ins and court hearings. I've included here a few articles of arrests in San Francisco and Fresno at immigration courthouses, court hearings, as well as ICE check-ins. And so again, we encourage folks to do this not on their own, but in coordination with rapid response networks or community organization, so that when there is someone who has a hearing or ICE check-in, to encourage folks to be there and support. Again, getting connected to legal resources and having that community behind folks, I think is going to be most helpful. This doesn't obviously guarantee that somebody might not be apprehended when they go to these things, but again, it's a way of showing up for folks who are in a very vulnerable situation and are very much at risk, because again, we are seeing folks getting picked up at these different types of locations. Folks are getting notices to appear and they have to show up in person. And again, it can be a very scary thing for folks to do. And so again, this is a way to really be able to be in community and be supportive. And again, even if you're not able to obviously prevent it from happening, the fact that now there's a witness, there's someone who will have seen it potentially and can speak to what happened, and we can report it and let others know and take action based off of that, I think is also very useful. Additionally, doing Know Your Rights training or sharing information. So I think some of the things that I've alluded to are sort of a Know Your Rights mini kind of thing, right, where you're giving information, but also you could consider doing a Know Your Rights training. So this could be a big or small event, right? Maybe this is just you and your family, your friends, getting together in the living room and you're sharing information about your rights. Or maybe this is an apartment complex and you're bringing together community members. Or maybe there's a community space that folks often gather where you want to provide information for. So I think, this can look very differently. But I think, again, this is sort of a thing that folks can do to disseminate information in a moment where it could be very useful. And then want to remind folks that there's no need to create anything your own, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there's a lot of resources, including us. You can reach out to us to help you or give you suggestions or guidance for these. But being able to just get information out, I think, is really important. And then lastly, just thinking about the location. Again, obviously, you don't want to do it in a place where nobody feels comfortable going to or they're not familiar. And so thinking about how to make the event as accessible as possible in terms of location and language access and all those things. So yeah, I think just thinking about where there's gaps or where there's opportunities for you to be able to put together some sort of gathering or event where we're bringing people together. And I think in this moment, the more people know their rights, the more people are able to exercise their rights, the better. So there's lots of opportunities here for folks to engage. Another thing that folks can do is also meeting with your elected officials. And so obviously ICE is at the federal level. And so obviously there's a lot of challenges at the federal level in terms of your advocacy. And there's a lot of rubber stamping of what's happening at the federal level. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still communicate with your representative, your Congress member, or anyone else at the federal level. But there's also opportunities at the state level and local that these are elected officials that should be doing something in support of immigrants. I mentioned the previous example of Know Your Rights training. Lots of different elected officials are co-hosting or hosting Know Your Rights trainings themselves, and utilizing their resources to spread the word. And so, really thinking about what are your local elected officials doing to support immigrants in this moment? How are they taking action? What are they doing? How are they allocating funds appropriately to support immigrants, creating programs, and other support systems for folks who are being impacted by immigration right now? And then pressuring them to do more, right? So, lots of folks can claim to be pro-immigrant and that they support immigrants, but when it comes down to it, we've seen a lot of elected officials who are willing to throw our communities into the bus or to say only these immigrants deserve support and not these. And so really encouraging elected officials to do more and to not feel like they're powerless, right? Like at the end of the day, whether they're a school board member or study council member or board supervisor, there's lots of opportunities for them to think creatively and to think about how they can support immigrants in this moment. And so I think it's really important for folks to put that pressure and to say that in this moment, we cannot have the status quo. We cannot sort of accept that, this is a federal issue that they cannot deal with. They actually can do something and they should be doing something. And so again, that can look a lot of different ways, but feel free to reach out if you want ideas or suggestions. But again, there's a lot of work that can happen there. And then lastly, to close this off in terms of some tangible things, we want to just encourage you to talk to your own network. So oftentimes, we might say that, these are difficult times and this is so bad that this is happening, and then move on with our day. But again, I think this is a moment where we have to acknowledge that this is not okay and this is not normal. And again, if we want to change that and make things better, we have to be able to do something differently. And so I want to encourage folks to really have difficult and challenging conversations with your friends, family. Is there anyone in your life that maybe cares about this issue, but maybe isn't necessarily doing anything about it? Is there an invitation that you can make to get them, to encourage them to get involved? And also, it's always easier to get involved in anything when you have someone that your friend, or loved one or family member. When you do it together, obviously that makes everything a lot better. And so, use it as a way to get involved together, invite them to something that's happening, or say, hey, I have an idea. Have you considered this? Or do they have a connection to a business or a community space or anything like that? And so again, I think this is just about making sure that we're encouraging as many people as possible to do anything in this moment, really, and to take action and to be involved. This is a moment where there's just so much that needs to be done, and there's so much work that can be done, and there's so much opportunities. But the more people that are involved, that are doing it, the better. So again, that may be volunteering to pass out red cards, or that could be, answering phone calls when folks call the rapid response hotlines, or that may be them going out to the community to confirm whether ICE is actually present or not. But again, just making that invitation. So want to encourage you all that are on this call to invite someone and to, share the recording, share the slides, invite folks to follow some of the links and to get involved in any way they can. But again, in this moment, there's not a lot of things you could do. Well, there's some things, but there's a lot of things you could do, and so we want to encourage you um, to explore those things and to have those conversations with folks and to hopefully find something that you can do as well. And again, we're here as a resource. So if you also want to reach out, if you have questions, or if you're not sure, or anything like that, feel free to do that. So we're going to go to a quick Q&A. We have about 8-ish minutes. So I put some questions here on the screen in terms of, I'm curious what folks are seeing in their community. Are you seeing ICE activity? I sort of asked this question earlier, but have you connected with your local rapid response network? What's that experience been? Some folks share that in the chat. Again, are you seeing ICE activity in your community? And lastly, what resources or support you feel like you need in order to engage or take action in this moment? So Ashley's going to help me out with the Q&A. See if there are some questions that folks might have.
Yeah, here's a couple of questions. These are related, I think. If we appear at an ICE meeting or hearing, what exactly can we do other than watch? And then relatedly, how do we find out which community organizations are coordinating accompaniment?
Yeah, so I think the best place to start would definitely be through the rapid response networks. Again, many of them are, somebody might call and say, "Hey, I have a nice check-in. What can I do, or what should I know?" And then they may be able to then reach out to volunteers or other folks in the community to support. So I think that sort of would be the best way to go about it, because in that way, again, you could support them within a structure rather than you just sort of going on your own and you not being sure what to do. It may be that they need someone who's actually a lawyer, and so your participation, if you're not a lawyer, maybe is that going to be helpful. But again, they're probably going to be the best situated to be able to let you know what sort of support they need.
And there were a lot of folks in the chat who were commenting that they've reached out to their local rapid response network and haven't been able to get in touch with anyone. I suggested just kind of keep trying. A lot of organizations have been a bit overwhelmed the last several months. Do you have any other advice on that front, Liz?
Yeah, I think definitely keep reaching out. I definitely agree that I think some folks have been overwhelmed. Folks are getting lots of calls and lots of requests for information and things like that. So if you don't hear back once, reach back out again. Feel free to reach out to me if you need some support, and I'm happy to figure out how to get you connected. But I think right now, I think my understanding is that most folks are wanting more support and volunteers. And so we can, if that's not the case, then at least we can figure out what the answer is there. But thank you for your willingness to volunteer.
Yeah, there's a lot of action in the chat around what folks are doing with their local networks and other volunteering that folks are doing locally. So thank you all for that. Another question. This is sort of a know your rights kind of question. Are the people who are getting picked up, for example, at Home Depots and other public spaces or stores, why are they getting picked up? Are they not exercising their right to remain silent? What can they do to prevent getting picked up?
Yeah, great question. So I think what we've seen in LA is that people are getting picked up for no reason, right? I think there is a lot of what appears to be folks' rights being violated. And just because you assert your rights and you know your rights, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to respect your rights. And so so some folks are being picked up. That doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't exercise their right or they didn't remain silent, but that also doesn't mean that they're not still being arrested. And so I think it's important for folks to exercise their right. It's important for folks to know their rights, but also to understand that their rights may be violated. I think in LA, what's going on is just there's sort of a widespread attempt to arrest as many people as possible. There's constant and ongoing raids and ICE activity happening on a regular basis in various communities. And so I think there is definitely arrests of folks who shouldn't be getting arrested happening. And so again, there's folks who are buying out street vendors merchandise so they can go home and they're not going out there in the community being vulnerable. And so I don't think there's sort of an answer or a thing that you can do to avoid being arrested. I think there's just sort of a very much more heightened risk of being arrested in Southern California in this moment.
A couple of questions related to um, who ICE or whoever is contracting with to pick people up or kidnap people. Is there anything people can do to identify who is actually taking people into custody? Obviously, in California, ICE cannot contract with local police like other states have been doing, but how do we find contracts between ICE and others like bounty hunters? And is it even important for us to know who they're contracting with? And how do we know that it's not gangs like the Proud Boys, et cetera? And then, yeah, similarly, a question, is the government using bounty hunters? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of different elements there, but I will say that I think it's important for folks to ask the question of like who are you, and asking folks to identify themselves. They may not give that information, but folks should still ask, and if you're witnessing something happening, you should still press for that information. And again, make a note of, do they have a badge? Is there anything on their vest that identifies them? Is there something on their vehicle that would identify them? But at the end of the day, if somebody gets arrested, they're generally going to be put into the system. And so there is information that we've shared in the past that I can make sure to link here to find folks who are detained. And so that'll be sort of an obvious way of confirming folks. So I've seen folks that if they're witnessing, for example, someone getting arrested, they're asking them for their information or their name. So that way they'll have that and they're able to look them up, or again, getting them connected to legal resources. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of the scary part right now, is that a lot of folks are confused. These are masked folks. They're not identifying themselves. They're not obviously immigration agents. And so I think there is a lot of confusion that is causing, a lot of fear that is causing. But again, at the end of the day, if someone is picked up by ICE, we will be able to identify them, generally speaking.
The question about whether people can request Zoom immigration court hearings.
Yes, my understanding is that some people can, but others are required to go in person. So I think it just depends on their specific situation. If somebody's requested to, if somebody's told that they have to go in person and they don't have an option to do that virtually, then that's not that may not be an option for them.
I'm trying to find a perfect last question since we only have 1 minute left. I don't have a perfect last question, but um, there was a lot of, okay, so someone in the chat said that their neighbor lost their work visa and they've already applied for asylum. They're from Venezuela. They lost their work visa. They've already applied for asylum, but obviously they can't pay rent if they can't work. Um, how can I help them stay safe? I think there was a lot of chatter in the Q&A, or sorry, in the chat about suggestions of different organizations to reach out to, but do you have any specific suggestion, Luis?
Say go through the Rapid Response Network. A lot of them have connections to folks who are doing mutual aid networks or other organizations who can provide support with those kinds of things. And so again, I would say let's funnel them through that, encourage them to reach out to them, let them know the situation they're in, and again, they can connect them to other resources. I think the Rapid Response Network is sort of meant to be sort of a catch-all for a variety of different services and support, and so that might be something that they can help this individual with. Awesome. Okay, we're going to run through these upcoming events really quickly, but this is not an upcoming event. This was actually today, but I will link this. There was a briefing that ACLU, our ACLU national colleagues did earlier today at 2 p.m., where they talked about some of the different Supreme Court cases that were just heard. And so, again, we'll provide that link, but you can also go to the ACLU YouTube online and check it out there. It is up there. Additionally, there is a National Day of Action happening on July 17th of this month. If you go to goodtroubleliveson.org, there's a map of different events that are happening throughout the country. And so if you are interested in taking action, a lot of the events that are happening are in the evening, and so hopefully it's like after work and allows folks to participate. But again, this is really speaking out against everything that's happening, with an emphasis on voting rights and civil rights. And so, again, all the different events look different. Some are, for example, movie screenings or rallies or things like that. But I encourage folks to go to that website, find out more about any local events that are happening. And then lastly, we want to plug our summer recess. We are going to be meeting with state legislators, state legislators across the state to talk about lots of important state legislation. If you haven't already heard about this, we will be sending out this link, encourage folks to sign up. We do have our kickoff happening on the 22nd of this month, and then we're going to be having in-district lobby visits with select members the following weeks as well, while they are on break. And so if this is something that you would be interested in, if you want to participate, I encourage you to sign up. We'll also do some text banks and provide other opportunities for folks to participate if you're not able to do an in-district lobby visit. But again, we will share that information after. And with that, I want to say thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciate you all for the engaging questions and for joining us. We will follow up again with that follow-up email with the recording and the slides later this week, but feel free to reach out to us at changemakers@aclunc.org if you have any questions. Thank you all so much and have good nights.